wide brim hat, birds singing, leaves on the trees. Must be springtime in Britain. So welcome back, or if you're a first time viewer, hello. And I'm a little bit different from usual. If you're a regular to my channel, you know I do a lot of vlogs around landscape photography, but actually probably most of my photography is other outdoor stuff, birds, mammals, insects. I particularly have a soft spot as well for woodland flowers. So I've come to a woodland in North Wales, hoping to get some of those early flowers that appear quite briefly early in the spring and then are gone. So as I work my way up through the woodland, hopefully spotting some of those, so wood anemone, maybe sorrel, a couple of other things, maybe some, not sure. Bluebells probably a little bit early for bluebells, but I'm going to go and have a look, and I'll run you through the process of some macro photography, photographing flowers, and some tips and tricks. And the last time I was here in this woodland, I was recovering from my operation, and I didn't vlog, didn't bring my camera or anything. I just came for a recuperative walk. I thought that was in the autumn, so it's nice to see the woodland springing back into life. So let's go and try and find some flowers and get some shots. I'm in the woods proper, as you can tell, and just thought this is a perfect example of timing being really important. So it's early spring, so there's a helicopter going over at the moment, but while there's leaf coming out on the trees, they haven't got the full canopy yet. So in a couple of weeks, maybe a month's time, all the leaves will be on these trees and here will be really dark. But actually what I want to show you is, this is really interesting. So there's a lovely view through here, and at the moment it just looks like a sea of green, but trust me, that is all wild garlic. So in a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, this will be a sea of white flowers, beautiful white flowers that, as you would suspect, smell really, really strongly of garlic. So I've logged it to come back in 2 or 3 weeks, because I just think that path leading through a scene of wild garlic with that lovely tree here, that'd be great. But you find photographing woodland flowers, there's almost like an arms race going on. So you get the things like wood anemone come out quite early, and they're desperate for the light. We want the light, we want the light. And things like wood sorrel come out quite early on. But then you get things like the garlic and the bluebells pushing up past. So it's they're racing each other. So if you come out early, you'll get things like the anemone and the sorrel maybe. But then a little bit later, they'll have been overtaken by something else, by the garlic perhaps. Or so they're competing constantly. So don't ever think a woodland flowers, it's a one-off. It's 1 week in spring and job's done. If you come back frequently, you get a different interpretation. And just thought you might find this quite interesting. It's an old abandoned house. When I came on my walk last time, I went and explored in there. I won't do it because I've got my backpack on now, but it's really interesting. It's some really nice brickwork around the windows, but I'd love to know what it's for, because it's in the middle of the woods. So I'm just coming out of this part of the woods and into another part. So I'll be back. Get that gate closed. Be back with you in a short space of time. I'm on the edge of the woodland, so there's actually, you can see that wall there, there's actually agricultural fields there. So right on the edge of the woodland, where you get quite a lot of space between trees, and it's the perfect place. I've come across this lovely drift of wood anemone, so these little white flowers, which I just think are the epitome of spring. So they're when I see those, I know winter's over and spring is on the way. Having said that, probably snow this weekend. So, but this demonstrates my first rule of photographing woodland flowers: is take your time. So, you know, I had a good wander round, came along the path. There's wood anemone over there, there's wood anemone here. And before I even got my camera out, I just had put my bag down and went and had a little looked at that drift over there, looked at the drift here, and then over here, taking my time to think, where can I find a good example of one of the flowers. So you need to find a flower that looks fresh, that isn't ragged, hasn't gone over. So, you know, it looks new and kind of newborn almost. There was a pheasant calling in the background there. And then find the composition. So when you're photographing landscapes, you're constantly looking up at kind of, you know, into the distance. When you're photographing flowers, constantly looking at your feet, and it's really important to look at your feet as well. So I try really hard not to stand on any of the flowers, because, you know, I'm here to kind of take an image, but I don't want to destroy things while I'm here. So I just choose my footing carefully, and then I'll show you what I'm up to. So it's lovely. This old, I think it's an ash tree, lovely kind of moss on the back of it. But then what caught my eye was this individual flower here. It's in a lovely position. The sun is behind it, so it's getting kind of nice light on it. It's isolated, so it allows me to pick it out and show kind of species. The wood anemone tend to grow in drifts like this, but as you can probably see, they don't clump together, so you get kind of distance between them, which is helpful when you're trying to isolate one, because you can often just pick one out. One thing I will do is a bit of gardening. So if I look behind the flower, there's these leaves, so that would fall, and this stick, so that would fall, just move kind of distractions out of the way. So this like old bit of twig moves, you know, call it gardening, kind of just moving kind of distractions out the background. And then if I come to what I'm set up as, so I've got my, sorry, I should explain, I've got my macro lens in, which is 100mm 2.8 Canon macro lens. I've set up, so got obviously my tripod set up low down, and I'm quite close to the flower, and I've focused on the flower. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but what I'm trying to do is just pick it out with just the I don't want kind of background detail, just want the flower. It's one of those kind of artistic shots. If you're eagle-eyed, you would have seen I'm on f2.8, which gives me a razor thin depth of field, so the whole of the flower won't be in focus. The front of the flower will be in focus, but the back of the flower won't be. But I'm doing that because I want to get the fastest shutter speed I can, just to get the light that's currently shining on the flower. And let's see if that works. So what I've picked out is just the flower and the kind of light shining through the petals. So it's a arty shot. So I pre-focused, and then I'm using spot metering, and I'm taking my meter reading right off the bright white petals. So what it's actually suggesting is f2.8. Sorry, wrong button. It's suggesting that I should end at about a 5,000th of a second. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm underexposing down to 8,000th of a second. Super quick shutter speed, and it just gets the flower. None of the background detail, just hopefully picks up. So I'm going to move around a little bit to try and get some different angles on this flower, because I think just as the sun's shining on it, it's perfect. But that gives you an idea, hopefully, about kind of how I'm working. Spot metering, very sharp, very narrow, depth of field, focusing on the front of the lens, on the front of the flower. What I'll do when I kind of move position slightly, I'm trying to get more of the face of the flower. So I might go to 5, 6, maybe even 8 to get more depth of field. But you'll see that when I post the images. But that image I was taking then was more about kind of the arty feel rather than kind of a botanical view of the flower, if that makes sense. Well, I've moved my camera a little bit to give me more of a kind of a face-on view of the flower, but you wonder where my hat's gone. Well, it's just a little tip. So there was distracting stuff in the background behind the flower, so I took my hat off. So there was an anemone and a couple of leaves that were catching the sun. So as I mentioned earlier, I was trying to just isolate the one flower, but the sun was picking those things up in the background. So I took my hat off and I put my hat over them. And I'm now on, you might not be able to see that on the screen, but I'll give you an idea by kind of brightening, going the wrong way, brightening it. So kind of, there's the flower. Obviously that's hugely blown out at the moment. But I'm focused on the face of the flower, but I've gone to f11. And what I'm doing is dropping the exposure down about 2 stops. And what that is giving me is, with the benefit of my hat in the background, although the sun's now shining on the top of the hat, which I'll have to change, just isolating the flower, just kind of picking out nothing but the leaves and, is it stamen? Think back to my biology. So the petals, sorry, and the stamen. I just want it kind of just to kind of get that flower head and nothing else. So just dropping my hat in the background, going to f11 gives me kind of quite a big depth of field. Although you have to bear in mind, when you're photographing things with macro, it's not like when you're photographing landscapes. So, you know, if I was photographing a woodland and had f11, my depth of field would run somewhere from, you know, maybe the end of, you know, if I was focused on the end of this, or the end of these branches, my depth of field would run into those trees in the distance. It's completely different to when you're photographing macro. My depth of field on f11 will probably just about cover the front of the flower head to the back of the flower head. You're talking kind of really small margins of error with depth of field when you're using macro. So don't think it's the same as landscape, where you've got kind of those big depth of field. It's relative to the size of the thing you're shooting, almost. So you're shooting macro, so you've got to think about shrinking everything down. There was a bee kind of bothering me. So I'm going to take a couple more of this. I'll reposition my hat to take the sun off, and then look for some other things. So there's a couple of dog violets around here, which I'm going to try and photograph if I can find a nice sample. I couldn't find any dog violets that were kind of healthy looking specimens. Found quite a lot of them, but they were all a bit damaged. I don't know whether that was, we had a kind of cold, kind of 2 or 3 days ago, kind of a little bit of snow, and I don't know whether that's damaged them or not. So I'm kind of deep in the woodland, although there's a road not far by, so you might be able to hear kind of the occasional motorbike flying past. But I'm working on this individual flower, and I'm going for an image of the face of the flower, so I'm a little bit below it, kind of looking up at it, and I'm on f2.8, which has given me kind of a 1,000th of a second shutter speed, and it's a bit like photographing people. Flowers have a face, so I'm looking up a little bit to try and cut out all the background. f2.8, so you see the flowers kind of here. f2.8 all the background will essentially disappear. So I'll end up with an image, hopefully you can see this, end up with an image of kind of just a flower. And I'm on f2.8 because it gives narrow depth of field, focused on the very, very centre of the flower, and the petals around the edge will be a bit soft, and I'm hoping that kind of creates kind of an artistic look. That's what I'm hoping anyway. But I'm going to kind of carry on kind of scrabbling around the woods on my hands and knees to see if I can find anything. What I'd like to find is some, I've seen some of them, lesser celandine, which is a nice yellow flower, but I haven't seen any good samples. But I'd like to find one of them before I pack up and go. Heading back to the car. There's a river just to the right of me, which you'd probably have to hear in a second. Couldn't find any celandine that were in a nice place, in a kind of photogenic setting, or if I found them, they were kind of bit gone over, so have to keep trying. But there's the river I was mentioning. So heading back to the car. Let's have a look. Let's have a look down. Quite a decent flow there. So yeah, so heading back to the car. Hope you found that interesting, useful. As I mentioned, I do quite a lot of wildlife, kind of wildflower photography and insect photography, but I don't really vlog about it. So if you'd like to see more of that type of stuff, let me know, because it's hard to judge whether people are interested in it. And then kind of, I guess the final message would be kind of when you go out to photograph wildflowers, you know, take your time, but most important thing is don't do any harm. Don't pick wildflowers, don't trample on them, and, you know, don't cut them down or anything to kind of make your life easy, because kind of that's not the sort of thing you should be doing. So I'll see you next time.